Hello everyone. So in today's lesson we're going to start on a new topic. Now, it's not exactly a new topic because in my opinion this is just a topic that you've already done before, but many students tend to make some common mistakes in this topic, and this is algebra. Okay, so today we're going to look at simplifying algebraic expressions, and for a lot of you this is going to be pretty easy stuff. So let's just get started. Right, so these are the form of an algebraic expression. So as you already know, an algebraic expression is made up of terms involving variables and numerals. For example, 3x squared minus x plus 10 has three terms: 3x squared minus x and 10. Now the variables in this case are the x, okay, that's the variables. So as you can see, 3 is the coefficient. Now a coefficient is basically a number in front of a variable. So in this case, 3 is the coefficient of the term 3x. 4 is the coefficient of the term 4y. Variable, pronumeral, they're basically the same thing. Now what they are is basically these things. The x and the y, these are variables or pronumerals. And a constant term, now a constant is basically a number. Okay, so it can be 7, 8, 9, so on. So basically it's something that does not have a variable attached to it. That's a constant. Okay. Now to simplify an algebraic expression, there are many ways to do it. So let's just take a look. An algebraic expression is made up of terms involving variables and numerals. So for example, this 4x, that's a variable. Numerals are basically like constants, right? So for example, 3x squared minus x plus 10 has three terms. So these are called terms. 3x squared minus x and 10 are called terms. Variables or pronumerals are the terms whose value can vary or change. So that's why they're called variables, because they can vary, of course. So you have x, y, and so on. Now to simplify an algebraic expression, you probably already know, but basically you just have to collect the like terms. So like terms have exactly the same variables. So for example, 4x, 9x, and x are like terms. You can think of these as 4 apples, 9 apples, 1 apple. Okay. Only like terms can be added or subtracted. So let's just take a look. So in this expression, if you had to simplify it, 4x minus 9x and minus x are like terms, so then they can be combined. Okay, so what is 4x take away 9x? That's minus 5x. Minus 5x take away x is minus 6x. So then what you have is minus 6x. So what you've done is you've collected these three terms together to get minus 6x, and then you have a minus 3 remaining. So you just write minus 6x plus 3. Alright, so for this one, now which are the like terms? So like terms are the ones with the a squared b, right? So this is a like term to this. This is also a like term. Now this is not a like term, okay? This is something else. 8a and 3a squared b are not like terms, so you cannot add them together. So then how would you add this with this and take away this? Just treat them as apples. So what's one apple plus another apple? Take away 3 apples. Well, that's going to be minus 1 apple, right? So then you just write minus 1 of that thing there. So it's a squared b. And then this is the one that's remaining, so you just write plus 8a. Okay. Let's look at example 3. So example 3, where are the apples? So I can put this one with this one, right? And then I can put this one with this one, right? Because this one has m squared and this one has m squared. This one is n squared with n squared. So what's 8 apples take away 4 apples? Well, 4 apples. All right, 4 of those things. What's minus 5 bananas plus 7 bananas? So that's going to give you 2 bananas, right? So you write plus 2 of this thing, which is n squared. So I guess the lesson to learn is that you can only put like terms together, and like terms, they need to have exactly the same things together. So just because this one has an a in it does not mean a and a squared b are like terms. They're unlike terms, so you cannot put them together. Right, and you probably already know this anyway. Multiplying terms. When multiplying terms, multiply the numbers and variables separately. When multiplying terms with powers that have the same base, you add the powers. So these are just your index laws, which you should probably already know. If you have a to the m times a to the n, you have a to the m plus n. If you divide them, you just take away the powers. If you have a bracket like this, you can multiply the m and n, and if you have anything to the power 0, it's 1. Alright, so just remember this. Multiply the numbers and variables separately. very important that you do this, okay? So let's just take a look at this example. Minus 5p times minus 6p. So multiply the numbers first. What's minus 5 times minus 6? 30, right? Next one, you multiply the variables. So what's p times p? Well, p times p is p squared, right? Remember, anything, so p to the 1, so p is the same as p to the 1. P to the 1 times p to the 1 gives you p to the 2, right? Right, now to do this one, now there's different ways you can do this. If you want to do it slowly, what you can do is, so you can write this out as this, minus 2rt squared times minus 2rt squared. Now you don't have to do it like this, but this will just make it easier for me to explain what to do. So like I said, multiply the numbers and variables separately. So what's minus 2 times minus 2? So these are the numbers. So minus 2 times minus 2 gives you what? 4. The next one you do rt squared times rt squared. Now what you can do is just multiply the r's together first. So what's r times r? You get r squared. What's t squared times t squared? That would be t to the 4, right? So if we multiply two terms with the same base, you just have to add the powers, okay? So 2 plus 2 gives you 4. Alright, let's do the next one. 10u squared times 3u on 2. Now, what you can do is this. So you can write this as 10u squared multiplied by, now 3u on 2 is the same as 3 on 2u. Okay, so you can actually pull the u into the side. So you write it like this. Now what you can do is just multiply the numbers first. What's 10 times 3 on 2? So that should give you 15. And what's u squared times u? That's u cubed, right? So that's your answer. So, I mean, that's how you do these questions. So hopefully there's no dramas here. The next one, you have to divide. So dividing is just the opposite of multiplying. When dividing terms, divide the numbers and variables separately. So just like how when you multiply two terms, you multiply the numbers and variables separately, right? So apply the same logic here. When dividing terms with powers that have the same base, you subtract the powers. So if you have something like 3 to the 6 divided by 3 to the 2, that's equal to 3 to the 4, okay? Do not try to divide the 6 by the 2. That would give you the incorrect answer. So to get the 4, you just do 6 take away 2. Alright, so then let's take a look at this. So what's 6? Okay, so in here, you just divide the numbers first. So what's 6 divided by 14? Well, you can just divide the 6 by 2 and divide the 14 by 2, right? To simplify, so you have 3 over 7. Next up, what's d divided by d to the power of 2? So you can divide top and bottom by d. So if you divide the top by d, you get 1. You divide the bottom by d, you get d, right? Right, and the next one up, you have e squared divided by e squared. That would just give you 1. So then your answer is 3 over 7d. I'm just going to explain it again. So if you have d on the top and d squared on the bottom, what you can do is, if you divide top and bottom by d, so if you divide this by d and divide this by d, to simplify, you have 1 over d, right? So that's how I have the d at the bottom. And e squared over e squared is just 1, so you don't need to write anything. Alright, let's do the next one. So then you just divide the numbers and variables separately. What's 16 divided by 8? Gives you 2. What's w to the 5 divided by w? Well, what's 5 take away 1? Remember, w is just w to the 1. So then you have w to the 4. What's y squared divided by y? That would just be y, right? Because that's the same as y squared divided by y to the 1. And 2 take away 1 gives you 1. So that's your answer. Alright, so let's take a look at the third one. Now, the third one is just the same as the first one. So I'm not going to go over that. I'm not sure why. There's another example here. Alright, so multiplication and division of fractions. So to do this, you have to collect all numbers in the numerator and denominator. Collect all the pronumerals in the numerator and denominator. Okay, so... Okay, I mean, there's a few ways you can do these questions. Now, my favorite way is actually just to simplify first and then you multiply rather than times both sides first and then simplify. So I'll explain to you what that means. So if you have a fraction take away a fraction, you're allowed to like simplify on the way. So if you have a b here, a b at the bottom and a b at the top, you can actually just cancel them out. Okay. Now here you have a w at the top, a w at the bottom, cancel them out. A 4 at the top and a 2 at the bottom, you can just divide top and bottom by 2. So divide this by 2, you get 1. Divide this by 2, you get 2. Right. So then what you're left with is 2n times n, which gives you 2n squared. So that's the way that I like to do it. The other way is I think the way that's explained here, and that's, in my opinion, is the slower way, but I'll just show you how that works. So to do it the way they want you to, you just multiply the top and bottom. So then you have 4nw times bn. So then you just multiply them. So 4 times, in this case, 1 gives you 4. N times n gives you n squared. And then w times b just gives you bw, right? So just put them together. And then at the bottom you have b times 2w, so that's just 2wb, right? And then once you get this, it says collect all the polynomials. And then you have to simplify this. So how do you simplify this? W divides with W, B divides with B, 2 goes into 4 twice, so you have 2n squared. So it doesn't matter which way you do it, you get the same answer either way. I personally like method 1 more than method 2. Alright, so I'm just going to be using method 1 for these questions because I think it's much easier. So let's take a look. So what can I simplify? By the way, you can only divide things that are at the top and the bottom. So in here, I can't just divide the n here and the n there because both ends are at the top, so you cannot simplify it like that. Alright, so there's a at the top, I can divide top and bottom by a. I can divide top and bottom by d. And 4 and 12 can be simplified. I can divide this by 4 to get 1, divide this by 4 to get 3. So I'm left with b squared over 9, right? So that's my answer. So it's pretty easy if you know what you're doing. Alright, let's take a look at this one. So what can I simplify? The b, c's can go away because they're at the top and bottom. The 3 can be simplified with the 6. If I divide top and bottom by 3, I get 2 here. I divide this by 5 and this by 5, I get 2. So I'm left with what? 2 times a times 2, which gives you 4a. Right. So it's very easy if you do it like this. Alright, the next one is division of the fractions. This is something you may have learned in year 7, but these are some slightly harder questions, but they're still pretty easy. When dividing by a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal. Now, I've gone through this word in the past. Reciprocal basically means 1 divided by that number. So the reciprocal of 3 is equal to 1 on 3. The reciprocal of 5 is equal to 1 on 5. You just have 1 divided by that number. The reciprocal of 2 on 3 is equal to 3 on 2. Because 1 divided by a fraction is the fraction flipped. Okay, so if I flip 2 on 3, I get 3 on 2. So that's what reciprocal means. Alright, so in this case, you have 4h on 5 divided by h on 10. So this is when dividing by a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal. So this is the same as 4h on 5 multiplied by the reciprocal of this number. So the reciprocal of h on 10 is 10 on h. And how do you do this? Well, you can just do this the same way as how I did these questions over here. Just cancel where you can. So divide top and bottom by 5, I get 2. Divide this by h and this by h. So I'm left with 4 times 2, which gives you 8. Right. Very easy. The same over here. So to divide by a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal. So what's the reciprocal of this? Just flip it upside down. 15d on 32k. And then start cancelling out things. So k's can go away. 8 and 32 can be simplified. I divide this by 8. I divide this by 8. I get 4. 15 and 5. Divide this by 5. Divide this by 5. I get 3. So I'm left with 3d over 4, right? Alright, so let's look at the next one. I assume it's going to be pretty easy as well. So just remember, if you divide by a fraction, multiply by the reciprocal. So remember, the first terms, they stay unchanged. You don't have to do anything to the first term. Multiplied by the flip of this, so that's 3 over 2p. And this equals 2. Now, see where I can simplify? I can cancel out the p's. And that's basically it. I can't do any more, right? So then what I have is 3h times 3, which gives you 9h, over 10. Alright, so this is all for today. So most of this stuff is somewhat revision, but some of you may learn something new. But remember, these concepts are actually very important in algebra, and they're kind of the fundamentals that you need to know. So just to summarize, here are the things that we went through today. Dividing by fractions means you multiply by the reciprocal. When you multiply two fractions together, try to simplify on the way. Don't try to multiply everything out first and then simplify, because you might make a careless mistake by doing this. We also went through dividing terms, where you have to take away when you divide the same terms with the same base. Multiplying terms, and then explaining what an algebraic expression is. Alright, so that's all for today. Thank you for listening.